The Washington Post's Gary Arnold called this movie a comedy of unavoidable fits and starts. Janet Maslin of the New York Times said it was a shrewd but very likable movie. And BBC's Almar Hafildasson called it one of the best comedies of the 1980s, featuring a cast at the height of their powers. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Trading Places.
Prequel. Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters!
Tony the Tiger?
Tony the Tiger.
Tony
Why
the
not?
Tiger.
Tony the Tiger.
Yeah.
You got a little frosted intro this morning.
I always look forward to seeing what you're going to do with the Greetings Starfighters.
You and me both. Starfighters, welcome. It's Ruined Childhoods.
It sure is. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing well, John. How are you today?
I'm good. I took the day off from work.
Oh.
I had a very busy couple of weeks, and I just was like, you know what? Thursday and Friday, we're recording this on Thursday the 8th, and so I'm like, okay, Thursday and Friday, taking them off. It's going to be great. So went for a nice little hike, got some stuff done around the house. It's been good. It's been good. We're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice cap to the day. Nice end.
Let me tell you. So I'm walking back from my hike, and so I live in an area of Portland. I was going to say Philadelphia because I have Philadelphia on the mind from Trading Places, our movie this week. But I live in Portland, and I live really close by to a amazing hiking trail. And from when I leave my home to when I return home, it is like exactly 1 hour. So it's like if I have 1 hour and I'm like ready to go, great. I get a nice hike in. It's lovely. It's not super busy. And get some exercise, get some fresh air. It's great. And on my way back today, I passed by this kid. I'd say he's probably like 18 or 19. Really like shaggy hair, kind of like hunched over the way that, you know, some...
In Portland?
In Portland, of all places.
Huh.
He's like kind of like hunched over the way that kind of like awkward teens when they're walking by themselves tend to do.
Listening to Black by Pearl Jam on repeat on their Discman. I mean, I would imagine.
This kid has never seen a Discman. I promise you that. And I noticed that he was wearing this black hoodie, and on the front it says Columbia Pictures. And I'm like, that's odd. And then I just figured that it was like a promotional thing where like on the back it would have like another, like a movie or something listed on it, some Columbia Pictures movie. I don't know what Columbia Pictures movies there are, because Columbia now...
Recently? This was Sony.
Right, because Columbia is Sony, so I don't know what it would be coming out now. But I look at the back, and it's just a vivid Columbia Pictures logo. Like, the front is just the text version, and then the back is like full color logo.
I feel like I would want that in reverse, like the logo on the front and then Columbia Pictures on the back. And I would want it like mid 80s, like Ghostbusters
Columbia logo would be great. Only if you could hear like the theremin kind of playing the Elmer Bernstein score. Elmer Bernstein, who also scored Trading Places, Dan.
Oscar nominated for his Trading Places score. The only Oscar nominated.
This is true. We did not bring this up intentionally to tie into Trading Places, but it just happened to work out that way.
Just happened.
So anyway, I saw that on my way back, and I was like, God tell Dan about that, because that's pretty cool sweatshirt.
Not the first time the theremin has come up today, by the way. Putting together, well, you know, where, so as I've discussed before, I direct theater at the high school where I teach, and we have been, myself and the other director who runs the program, we have been trying to figure out what to do to keep the program going while we're not while schools aren't opened here in Seattle. And for the project that we've been discussing, and you know what? We will have announced it by the time this episode airs, so I can say it. We are going to be doing like radio play adaptations of Twilight Zone episodes. And I was watching one of them. We have one script, I think, that I'm like 90% sure I want to do. I want to do 2 episodes because you can't really ask people to sit at their computers watching teenagers pretend to be radio actors for more than like 45 minutes. So 2 episodes, and I was watching one of the episodes and I was thinking about it. I was like, man, it would be badass, especially if we're just going to be showing like everybody in their like video conferencing box, but looking like they're in like a radio booth. And we're going to be showing, the people doing all the sound effects and everything. And I was like, if we had a theremin player.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool.
If we had someone, and the head of the program is the type of guy who I was like, I'm going to throw this out there and I'm not going to be surprised if the answer is yes. But I was like, do you or someone that you know own a theremin? And of course he shot back. He was like, I think I might know someone.
So what could also work aside from like the theremin, and I don't know if this is what Elmer Bernstein used for the Ghostbusters score. I saw Ghostbusters live with the orchestra playing. I wonder if it's like a singing saw. Have you ever seen someone play the saw?
Oh, yeah.
It has that kind of like weird, like wobbly vibe. Yeah.
Which sounds like that sounds like in Beetlejuice when Gina Davis is doing the ghost thing.
My God. Absolutely.
Sorry. I said that and it.
You're talking about Twilight Zone. There's the episode of there's this segment from the Twilight Zone movie directed by John Landis where Vic Morrow was, and you might have heard us talk about that one on the Bad News Bears episode. And that got John Landis kind of in a, I don't know.
John Landis was tried.
Right.
For manslaughter, and because it was Vic Morrow and 2 kids.
Right.
Who died. So,
and this was like right after Trading Places.
Yeah. Twilight Zone, the movie, came out the same year. And then, in fact, it was that trial, or I think it was, it might have been later in the 80s, but because Eddie Murphy didn't testify on John Landis, like as a character witness for John Landis, Landis was really bitter with Eddie. And that's why I think this happened after Coming to America, because I think their relationship was still pretty solid on Coming to America. But
I heard that they had their differences.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Beverly Hills Cop 3 where they were just.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of incredible that they worked together still, even after there was bad blood.
Yeah, but that was the so there's another connection, another weird Twilight Zone connection. Yeah, I knew we were gonna do that.
Yeah, well, I had to. We're literally talking about spooky Twilight Zone things.
We are literally talking about the Twilight Zone. Yeah.
So Dan, you and I have been getting a lot of texts from people today.
Yes.
And
one
yesterday.
more thing.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, Whoopi be listening to the podcast. What up, Whoopi Goldberg?
Whoopi,
because
if you are
allegedly,
listening.
Apparently, there's all of a sudden interest in a Sister Act 3, and talks have begun again. Kind of interesting. We did an episode about how we'd love for that to happen, and
I don't know if anyone has been talking about it. Yeah. And then we talked about it, and now Whoopi's talking about it, and now everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, so Whoopi, we know you're listening, so, if you want to give us some cameos, wouldn't be opposed to it.
Not in the least.
Our payment can be a Discman, a pencil, and a mug.
I'll take the pencil and the mug, honestly, because...
Yeah, right.
I'll take the pencil. That's a badass pencil, and I'm not a pencil fan. I am notoriously anti-pencil, in fact, in the classroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I got rid of all pencil sharpeners in my classroom because I didn't
own
want
your
my
mistakes.
Yeah. Well, no, that was honestly the explanation was I was like, first of all, you can't erase and it's going to look good. Otherwise, you're going to sit there for 5 minutes wasting 5 minutes on erasing. And that's why I don't use erasers or whiteout, because I'm like, no, I want to see whatever you crossed out. I want to see the process. Yeah. So I'm all about the mistakes.
Yeah. Do you have one more things for our last episode?
Oh, Gross Point Blank. Definitely. Yeah. So, and mostly just because in another, just kind of in a turn of maybe, John and I really not being as aware of what was, what was going on in the moment that we recorded this. But, after we recorded the Gross Point Blank episode, it was, John Cusack is on this new Amazon show that's getting a lot of hype, Utopia, and John Cusack goes on rounds. WTF, and I listened to that interview.
In all fairness, our focus was Dan Aykroyd.
It was on Dan Aykroyd. It was on Dan Aykroyd, but yeah.
It's Ayktobyr, baby.
It is Ayktobyr. And fittingly enough, because of Dan Aykroyd's fascination with the paranormal.
The occult, yeah.
Yeah. So, and 'tis the season. But yeah, so John just wanted to kind of like throw it out there that John Cusack is kind of making a little, I don't know if can you call it a comeback? He's been here for years. He does talk, what I thought was interesting though, is he talks about like some of those movies he made that we talked about that were like the straight to Netflix streamers, where it's like John Cusack with Bruce Willis or Nicolas Cage. And yeah, it was kind of like, he's like, you know, you go in, you shoot a movie and you have no idea what it's going to end up being.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to John Cusack, Nicolas Cage movies, I'm a Con Air guy all the way.
You're Cameron Poe.
That's right.
I'm Larkin.
Hello, Larkin.
I got your message.
Where are the troops?
You'll be here?
They'll be here.
Uh-huh. In a minute. Listen, Poe. Can I lower this?
Go ahead.
You gonna lower yours?
Sorry, boss, but there's only 2 men I trust. One of them's me. The other's not you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't seen Frozen Ground, and I'll be honest that since listening to this interview, I was a little, my interest was
intrigued.
Slightly piqued.
Well, you know what? Maybe we'll have to do a Con Air Frozen Ground back-to-back double feature episode.
You know what? That's another discussion for another time. We're not talking about Cusacting. We're just talking about acting. Acting. I'm pronouncing
Ayking.
Ting.
Tyng.
Acting.
The answer is yes.
Brilliant.
Acting.
Yes. Acting. That's what it is. Letters cannot capture it.
So, right. So you were just talking about how John Cusack has been kind of coming up in the moment. I don't have anything else that I wanted to bring up necessarily about Gross Point Blank other than it's just such a good movie. And I really appreciate the comments that people have left on our social media posts about it, because clearly it is a beloved movie. People remember a lot of the lines, and it's just
so
fun.
Many.
The energy of that
lines.
movie makes me really happy.
That's the great, yes, John, that's the thing, is that right now, if you need like a little dip into the nostalgia pool to get your smile back, Gross Point Blank, I know it did the trick for me. Like I was really happy watching it and listening to it, and not just the music, but the dialogue. And that brings us to Dan Aykroyd, as I've been doing a little bit more research.
Yeah. I was listening to another podcast recently, and they happened to bring up Dan Aykroyd, and they weren't even talking about Dan Aykroyd movies. Dan Aykroyd just came up, and they made a comment about how it seemed like after, what were they even talking about? Like maybe even after the Ghostbusters movies, you know, he just kind of played like an everyman. And I was like shouting at my, my phone. I was just saying like, but Gross Point Blank, come on. Like he was certainly more than just like your everyman.
And thinking about it more, I really thought like, man, I would have loved to have seen Dan Aykroyd play more characters, not necessarily just like Harry Grosser, but more characters with that dark side, but like that, and I know he did the Couch Trip, where I think he plays a psychiatric patient with Walter Matthau is the psychiatrist.
Oh, I don't know.
But that was a comedy. Michael Ritchie, I think, directed that one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Michael Ritchie, candidate?
candidate in Bad News Bears.
Bad News Bears, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that to see Dan Aykroyd play, and he's done dramatic, but to see him play a villain, it just made me really interested in seeing him, imagining what he could have done as a villain. I mean, like even in a Batman movie.
Oh yeah, I think that he's totally capable of, showing a lot of different sides.
Like with the right collaborators, with the when he's working like with Cusack. And what's so impressive, and I know we talked about the dialogue, and this carries over to Trading Places, but I had not known that Dan Aykroyd not only has struggled with Tourette's, but also Asperger's.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So, I mean, that's per Wikipedia. So,
grain of salt.
Yeah, but still, you could easily get that taken down if it was untrue.
Sure. No, that's very interesting, and you have to wonder how maybe that works in his favor in certain ways.
Well, it makes me wonder. It definitely makes me think about certain characters, like in a different, like Ray Stantz, like characters that he really crafted from the ground up.
Yeah.
So
Beldar Conehead.
Beldar, yeah, no, exactly. But I'd be interested to hear more about like his process and how that's affected his process, especially because I would imagine that someone with Tourette's, unless they really got, and this is maybe me speaking from an ignorant place, but his rapid fire dialogue in so many movies, not just Grosse Pointe Blank, Dragnet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's kind
if
of
you
like
think about Joe Friday, there's a certain quality to his character where you can see, somebody playing that character who does experience autism, maybe bringing something really unique to that character.
Care what undercover rock you crawled out from, there's a dress code for detectives in robbery homicide. Section 3-605, .10, .20, .22, .24, .26, .50, .70, .80. It specifies clean shirt, short hair, tie, pressed trousers, sports jacket or suit, and leather shoes, preferably with a high shine on them.
And everybody, most people experience, autism in different ways. So
I was
hard
thinking
to say
more
exactly the Tourette's.
With the Tourette's, because it depends, like Tourette's affects people differently, but it can affect like motor skills and speech. And I'm also thinking about it in terms of like, recently thinking about, Joe Biden as someone who's a stutterer, and how he approaches public speaking. So it kind of just added a dimension to, as I'm watching Dan Aykroyd in Trading Places, and I'm thinking more about like, okay, what's he working with? Because I mean, in Trading Places, he doesn't play that type of role.
No, definitely a character that would certainly want to give off the impression that they have no faults, that they are exactly as one would think that person should be. And why don't we get into, Trading Places, 1983, directed by, as we mentioned, John Landis. And away we go. Randolph and Mortimer Duke are the wealthy owners of the Duke & Duke commodity brokerage firm in Philadelphia. They agree on everything except two things: bow ties versus neckties and nature versus nurture. They decide to put the second item up to the test in a scientific experiment. One pawn in this scheme is Lewis Winthorpe III, bred to be a titan in the commodities trading game, and fiancé of the Duke brothers' niece. The other is Billy Ray Valentine, a homeless man with a fast mouth and sharp wits. The goal? Bring Winthorpe to the point of poverty that he resorts to crime, and replace him with Valentine, ideally with the end result of him outshining Winthorpe in the trading game. After framing Winthorpe for theft and drug possession, the game is on. The Dukes bring in Valentine and give him a brief training in the art of trading. He takes to it like fish to water, but that's not it. He quickly turns his back on his old ways and old friends and begins to appreciate the finer things in life, like jacuzzis. Winthorpe, on the other hand, has trouble adapting to his new way of life. He befriends a kind prostitute named Ophelia, who promises to get him back on his feet, and when he does, he'll owe her tens of thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, Winthorpe hits the bottle a little too hard and catches wind of Valentine taking over his entire life, which includes his job, home, and butler, Coleman. At the Duke and Duke Christmas party, Winthorpe crashes dressed as a dirty Santa and attempts to plant drugs on Valentine, calling out the injustice to the Dukes. They see that he is removed from the party at once, but not long before Valentine catches them wrapping up their bet, a wager of $1, and it is revealed that they plan to ditch Valentine after the new year once their bigger plan comes to fruition: the unlawful theft of the agricultural report for frozen concentrated orange juice, with which they will corner the market and make a ton of money. Valentine finds Winthorpe and they team up, with the help of Coleman and Ophelia, to get a hold of the agricultural report first, replace it with a phony, and stick it to the Dukes where it hurts the most: the wallet. Wink. After a carefully orchestrated heist on board an Amtrak train, the next day on the trading floor, Winthorpe and Valentine play the Dukes like a fiddle and corner the market on frozen concentrated orange juice, costing Dukes $400 million, resulting in them being sent into poverty and leaving Valentine, Winthorpe, Coleman, and Ophelia with enough money to chill on the beach, throw mama from the train style. So Winthorpe is Dan Aykroyd, Billy Ray Valentine is Eddie Murphy, the Dukes, Randolph Duke is Ralph Bellamy, and Mortimer Duke is Cocoon's very own Don Ameche.
Academy Award nominee.
Academy
Don
Award
Ameche.
for Cocoon, yes. After a long hiatus coming into Trading Places. Denholm Elliott is so good as Coleman. Jamie Lee Curtis is incredible as Ophelia. And we also have Paul Gleason as Clarence Beeks, who I didn't mention in the synopsis. He is the goon who the Dukes pay to set up a whole bunch of things in their scheme.
He's like their fixer.
He's their fixer, and he's also the person who is tasked with delivering the agriculture report to the, I don't know exactly where because he's going to deliver it to the person who's announcing on the news.
And now for the news.
Under heavy security, the crop estimates for next year's orange crop are being delivered from Miami to the Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Louis, that's him. That's the guy who paid me to talk dirty to you.
In charge of security is Mr. Clarence Beeks, head of Lyndhurst Security.
Clarence Beeks! The Duke just gave that guy 10 grand.
10 grand? I saw an outlay in the payroll to him for 50,000. Mortimer said it was for research.
Yeah, researching how he can get his hands on that top secret crop report 2 days before it goes public.
My God. The Dukes are going to corner the entire frozen orange juice market.
Unless somebody stops him.
Or beats them to it. Eggnog.
Yeah, so from what I understand, they took the actual one, forged one very quickly that said the opposite information, and did a little double switcheroo. Yeah.
And then pretended to be him and handed off the briefcase.
In a little deep throaty, garage transaction. It's a wild movie, and there's so much that goes on in this, and there's a really beautiful way that each character develops in their opposite trajectories. Valentine kind of becoming this refined, kind of brilliant trader who uses more than just the facts to give advice on how to trade.
Well, yeah, he's a hustler.
Yeah.
What are traders? Traders are hustlers.
Well, that's what when the Dukes are explaining to him what commodities trading is all about, he's like, "Oh, so you're bookies."
Yeah.
Now, some of our clients are speculating that the price of gold will rise in the future, and we have other clients who are speculating that the price of gold is going to fall. They place their orders with us, and we buy or sell their gold for them.
Tell them the good part.
The good part, William, is that no matter whether our clients make money or lose money, Duke and Duke get the commissions.
Well, what do you think, Valentine?
Well, it sounds to me like you guys are a couple of bookies.
I told you he'd understand.
No, he totally gets it. That's the thing is like their whole thing is they think like, oh, they can, if he just like spends time and lives in a nice place, he's going to figure it all out. But he knows it. he just hasn't been given the opportunities to
the same opportunities that somebody
skills.
like Winthrop has had his entire life, a white person who has grown up with every opportunity handed to them.
So here we have a movie all about white privilege before anyone was using that phrase.
Yeah, absolutely.
And about systemic racism and how watching this movie again. And I'm like, man, I wish like retroactive Oscars. I think I would give Trading Places best screenplay because not only
it's pretty brilliant.
Not only is that intricate like thing, like which I never really understood what they were doing until
exactly
I
what's happening
read about it.
Yeah, right. Well, if anybody wants to actually learn about what's happening, there is a fantastic episode of I believe it's an NPR podcast called Planet Money. And Dan, have you heard of Planet Money? It's great. It's a finance podcast, and there's an episode I believe called the Eddie Murphy Rule that talks all about this, and it goes into explanation about the actual Eddie Murphy Rule, an actual real life rule that was put into place because what they were doing was actually legal.
Yeah.
Like it's wrong, but like insider trading in commodities happens all the time because information just gets out because, it's not like it's corporations, it's farmers. So, so the information gets out, and using that information, it's really difficult to kind of crack down on that. So there was a rule put into place called the Eddie Murphy Rule that actually makes what they did illegal.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
I mean, I had to like read a couple of times the explanation.
If I can listen to a podcast about something instead of reading about it, that's great.
Oh, yeah. No, I if it's not about like movies or pro wrestling.
But this was about movies.
Oh, I get. Yeah.
And it's not like I was listening to it to be able to explain it to everybody. I was listening to it to like get just a better context. But it is complicated, and they actually have real commodities traders on there. One of them that actually deals in frozen concentrated orange juice. I don't know if it's definitely orange juice, not oranges, but orange juice.
Frozen concentrated orange. Yeah.
I mean this actual guy. So he was saying like people in commodities trading refer to Trading Places all the time because it is so accurate. It's amazing.
Well, it's the screenwriters, I think, like spent time with traders.
They would have had to
really study them. So, but watching this movie from the perspective of 2020 and just everything that we've learned from a reflection on the past, especially in terms of race relation, and the message of this resonates so much more. And I think the setting being in Philadelphia added an extra impact to me because there was a research study done by W.E.B. Du Bois in Philadelphia. He used Philadelphia as it was like, this is where I can get a good, sampling of data. And what he learned was that because of the labor unions not allowing Black members, the Black laborers couldn't really get good work. They could only get non-union jobs, which were few and far between and not good, and there's no protection. So what happened was because of the high unemployment, you have a high poverty rate, you have poor access to medical care, which leads to illness.
Yeah.
And then you add all that together and you end up having crime because you've got the desperation that leads to it. And it's all this cycle. And then the unions say, well, if you look at the Black neighborhoods, they get sick, so they're unreliable, or they're criminals because look at the crime rates. Yeah. So they're using a problem that they like created or enabled and using that to keep it going, to propagate it. So that's why I look at Billy Ray Valentine and I'm like, he is the result.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this movie does have, there's some controversy in it because of the scene in which Dan Aykroyd is in blackface.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah,
just because by that point you've also built up so much message and equity with these characters, and also the fact that it's Eddie Murphy's plan.
Right. I wouldn't say that it gets a free pass because it certainly didn't need to be that. There could have been other ways that they hatched their scheme.
No,
and what we're talking about is a scene on the Amtrak train when they are doing the old switcheroo with the agricultural reports. Valentine, Winthorpe, Coleman, and Ophelia are all in disguise because they have had interactions with Beeks before, so he would recognize them. So there's also a costume party going on the train for New Year's, which makes it a little bit confusing because they are not supposed to be in costume. They're just supposed to be eccentric people. So like Ophelia is this Austrian German, but also she's really Swedish
because because Jamie Lee Curtis couldn't do the Austrian accent.
Yeah, and then you have Eddie Murphy, who is, I don't even know how to explain,
West African.
Yeah, like
I think he's because I think he talks about like where he is from.
He talks so fast it's hard to keep up. And then Dan Aykroyd is, this guy who he's met at a conference, I want to say.
I certainly hope there's enough space on the train for me. Nenge Mboko from Cameroon. Do you remember me? It's Lionel Joseph.
Lionel! From the African Education Conference, right?
Yes, Simon. I was director of cultural events at the Haile Selassie Pavilion.
I remember the pavilion. We had big fun there.
I mean, it might have been the only way that they could figure out to establish some type of relationship between the two of them, but also Beeks would have recognized Winthorpe.
I guess
probably
so.
more.
If he was not,
I am not
disguised.
making excuses for blackface.
He could have had a beard on or something, and also he figures it out pretty quickly.
Oh,
I mean, not quickly enough, but
that leads to some of the funniest stuff in the film that involves Jim Belushi as the party goer in the ape costume, and Al Franken and Tom Davis.
Yeah, that scene, that entire sequence is where things really, and this is not a train joke, but goes off the rails. And it's like, it's a completely different movie at this point. At this point, it's just a straight up comedy. There's a major shift in tone because right before this, keep in mind, you have, a dirty, drunk Santa, aka Winthorpe, like trying to kill himself, shoot himself in the head, and
but that's the low point. But that's
right.
Still...
But it goes from low, and then you have like one scene in between, really, where they're kind of catching him up on everything, and then all of a sudden they're doing this giant scheme on the train. Not to say that I don't like it, but it is it's pretty wild. There's these two dumb baggage handlers who are in charge of a gorilla. And then there's this whole train car of people in costume having a party.
It's New Year's Eve. It's New Year's Eve.
Yeah, but costume parties?
Why not?
I understand. I feel like the costume party. Setup. The costume party is like it's like they worked backwards. They're just like, what's the ending for Beeks? Well, he needs to get fucked by a gorilla. How are we going to get him fucked by a gorilla? All right, well, maybe if there's a costume party on the train and there's somebody that he gets in a gorilla suit and the other gorilla becomes really horny. I don't know. Like it's almost like they worked backwards. And there's like, I don't know, a costume party on the train? Sure, why not?
I don't know. Yeah, why not? But I thought you also needed that because that's also right before the end. So you kind of need to see Beeks get his comeuppance because Beeks is really...
And boy, does he.
I mean, okay. The most despicable character in the movie is probably whichever one Don Ameche plays, Randolph, I think. Or is he Mortimer?
He's Mortimer.
Mortimer. So he's the most despicable one. He's the one who, when his brother is like on the floor having a heart attack, goes, fuck him.
Right. And I mean,
which is so great. I love the way he delivers that.
Right. And even though Randolph or Ralph Bellamy would have said the same thing, Don Ameche is the one that says like, no, I would never hire an N-word.
Yeah, no, he is, even though they're both awful, he is consistently
right, because it's
worse.
like, because the question is like, so what do we do with Valentine? This is after the bet is all done. They're talking about getting rid of him. And it's like, Billy Ray Valentine, like, has been making you guys so much money. Like, he's actually legit, like, really, really good. And he doesn't have, you know, the attitude as that Winthrop does. But can't keep him because he's black.
Well, and it comes down to the whole, you know, like the hiring pool, and that when corporations make excuses for not having
we hire the best person for the job.
Yeah, no, we hire the best people for the job, of course. So, yeah, but maybe the best people for the job aren't even applying, and like
right.
they got the best person for the job because he's stumbled into it. Like, literally.
Well, yeah, totally. So I don't know, that scene in the train is wild. I appreciate it. It makes the movie, I don't know, it kind of just turns it up a few notches.
And it also gives us one of the great, you know, memes or GIFs that gets passed around at New Year's. Merry New Year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is great. Plus, also, the entire time, you probably just want to see Eddie Murphy doing an Eddie Murphy thing. Because at this point, you know, did 48 Hours already come out?
Yeah. So, like, 6 months earlier.
It had, like, pretty much just come out, but we haven't really seen the, like, SNL Eddie Murphy on screen. And in this scene, you have him doing his like Eddie Murphy thing. You see it at the beginning of the movie when he is kind of this con artist, you know, homeless guy who's he kind of makes it seem like he has no legs and he's blind and everything. And so, but the rest of the movie, he's just a commodities trader. You know, there's really nothing very like wild Eddie Murphy about him, really goofy. But then you get that in the train.
You get it a little bit in the jail. Like, there's little bits of it here and there. Like,
yeah, but that's still, I still consider that it's act one. So,
well, no, yeah, and he's not doing it like he's not doing a character. Like, you see him, he throws in a little of the like Stevie Wonder when he's playing blind. Yeah, which, you know, it's just you're so used to seeing him doing that, but
right, but
he doesn't. Yeah, and he doesn't really do like characters
until you get to the train scene. So it's like giving the people kind of what they want. Anybody who's familiar with Eddie Murphy at that time is probably wanting to see something like that. And they get it.
And you know what? When I think about Eddie Murphy and I think about Eddie Murphy doing characters versus Eddie Murphy as Billy Ray Valentine or Axel Foley.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer that. I prefer 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Trading Places.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy. You know, Distinguished Gentleman is a Boomerang. You know, to get to some of the later ones. But I love the Nutty Professor is really funny.
Oh,
but
totally.
I like Eddie Murphy better when he is that wise ass, smart aleck, doesn't follow the rules and gets by his own way.
And
character.
This movie gives you every different Eddie Murphy that you could want.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that it really helps that it shows, like what we were saying before, like it shows him, given the opportunity, he is able to really be an excellent commodities trader. Like he just instinctually, he is just good at doing that. And
so what's interesting is sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no. So it's fun to see him being like a really smart guy, not just like a buffoon.
So then who really wins the bet, Randolph or Mortimer? Because it is kind of in his nature.
That's what I was thinking too. Right. Because is it Randolph? Wait, whichever one loses.
Randolph is the one who wins because he bets that put in opposite circumstances that the environment would raise Billy Ray up and would bring Winthorpe down. And it's like Winthorpe just has to resort to crime.
But I don't think that it's not the environment though, because he's not in an environment that would lead him into that world. You know, he's with Ophelia, who is, yes, she is a sex worker, but it shows her in a way that we don't see sex workers in films, you know, at this time. You know, we've seen like Taxi Driver, you know, prostitutes and things like that. But in this one, she's somebody who's just like really trying to get out of it as quickly as she can. She does things on her own terms. She doesn't have a pimp. She is a smart business person, but she didn't have the opportunities to, you know, excel in life. So she's doing it the way that she has to do it. And
she's got a plan.
She has a plan, and I love the scene when like the guy comes to her place with the flowers and everything to like take her out in quotes. And Winthorpe is sick and she tells the guy to go away. And she's like, I'm protecting my investment. And she's just like, you know, comforting Winthorpe.
Well, and so there's another one who was not given the right circumstances to succeed in Winthorpe's world, but when given those opportunities,
and I think that it's all nature for Winthorpe, because he is the one that was, you know, put in a position where it's an easy path to success. And when that is disrupted, his nature is to act out. And he goes to his like animal instincts to get that back, which is it's nature.
Well, I mean, and we, of course, you know, we know that it's a combination of both, really.
Well, for the purposes of this bet, I'm willing to say that.
But for the purposes of this bet, I would agree. I think it is ultimately nature, because you couldn't just take anybody and have them survive I wouldn't, like, you know, if you put me in, you know, Winthorpe's suits for a day and took me to the Duke's office, I wouldn't have a clue.
No.
I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't know what anyone was talking about.
No, they'd have to give you the whole training session where they're just like, and pork belly is what bacon is made of. And that's what you would have in your bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich.
On a bacon, lettuce. I love that. And the Eddie Murphy, those couple of moments in the movie when he looks at the camera. Oh, it's so, and the Ralph Bellamy's delivery on that line is
oh my God.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Ralph Bellamy and Don Ameche
so good.
Are excellent in those awful roles. And I think it's a good opportunity to talk about kind of the casting of this movie and kind of like what this movie really did for the cast. You know, it brought Don Ameche out of obscurity. He had been very successful early on and then just kind of like disappeared. And they had to like track him down. Everybody thought that he was dead, and they found him and got him to be in the movie. And then,
Where
of course,
was
he was just in Santa Monica hanging out, but like nobody was offering him film roles, so everybody just assumed that he was dead.
What a waste.
Yeah.
And
then he also happened. He got his Oscar.
And then he did Harry and the Hendersons.
That is also true. Famously, Sasquatch. Just kidding. So Dan Aykroyd, who had been in a few things before this.
Blues Brothers being
probably the most famous. 1941, Neighbors, but like kind of wasn't really hitting all that much. And then this came out and it really launched him into a very successful trajectory. I mean, Ghostbusters was right after this. I don't know if it was the actual next one that came out, but
Dr. Detroit was somewhere in there. I'm not sure.
This is the movie that got Eddie Murphy his deal with Paramount, that got him in all those movies for that long stretch of time.
Was it this one? It wasn't 48 Hours?
I believe it was this one, because 48 Hours, I think, was like, it had tested poorly And it was during production on this that like things really turned around for him.
Well, that's because 48 Hours would have come out when they were making this.
Right, yeah.
Because it came out, I think, winter 82.
Right, but from what I read, this is the movie that really catapulted him, at least in the favor of Paramount getting him that multi-picture deal. Jamie Lee Curtis they were very reluctant to hire her because she had only done like horror stuff before this, the first 2 Halloween movies, a couple little things here and there, and she wanted
New Year's Eve or something.
Yeah,
like that.
she just like really didn't want to be pigeonholed, and they reluctantly gave her the opportunity, and then because of this, she was cast in A Fish Called Wanda, and I mean, she's been so good in so many things.
And then how did I can't believe I had never made the connection that when they were in My Girl together,
yes,
they had already been in Trading Places.
Yes. I also watched My Girl and My Girl 2 to kind of complete the Dan Aykroyd, Jamie Lee Curtis partnership. And okay, I'm just going to tell you, it's almost as if my tear ducts have been just like dormant for years and years and years. I watch My Girl and they have awoken big time.
Niagara Falls.
It's crazy. But yeah, so Jamie Lee Curtis, another thing about this movie that it did for her is it gave her signature hairstyle. She has the short haircut.
Yeah, she's got the short haircut. Yeah. That's true. She doesn't have that in Halloween. So
no. Paul Gleason, I mean, this wasn't necessarily like catapulting him into anything huge. Denholm Elliott had already, been in Raiders and so many other things. So,
yeah. But and then Paul Gleason, by the way, if people are unfamiliar with him, you might remember him as the principal.
You mess with
the
bull.
dean in
You get the horns. Breakfast
Club. I mean, of course, he's in many other things, but most famously Breakfast Club, and I would say Trading Places. Those are his 2 biggest roles, or best known.
Yeah. And at least for me, Denholm Elliott, it's this and the Indiana Jones movies that he's in.
Yeah. Not A Room with a View. That's not
as much. No. But it's funny because as soon as I saw him watching this movie, and I probably haven't seen this in 10, 15 years, maybe. I saw him on screen and I just felt comfortable. There's something about Denholm Elliott that just makes me happy. And he's awesome because he's on the side of the good guys. He's been hired by the bad guys and just kind of had to do his thing. But he comes around. You don't really see too much of a shift in him, but like as soon as it becomes clear that he's got to do the right thing.
When Winthorpe comes to the door and Coleman has to tell him, you see it in his eyes, and it's a really nice moment for Denholm Elliott.
Yes?
Coleman, could you please let me in? I'm having trouble with my key.
Who are you? What do you want?
Coleman, just unchain the door and let me in. I'm in no mood for jokes.
Coleman. There's no Coleman here. You've made a mistake.
That's really, really heartbreaking. And Denholm Elliott just does such an awesome job. Great cast.
This movie, I think it's paced so well, and there is this great balance between there's actual character development and real relationships between the characters, and not just Ophelia and Winthorpe, but there's in fact the only relationship in it that feels totally fake is at the beginning, Winthorpe and his fiance.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, but that's what it's supposed to be.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the scene where he goes to the tennis club or the squash club or whatever it is, and she's like with the other guy. Then they're awful
with Todd,
and they have their little like barbershop quartet thing. Oh God, it's so painful to watch.
It's so terrible. You just want to smack them.
And she stepped on the ball.
Oh my God, I don't believe it.
Ah, there you are.
think I'm going to be sick.
Don't worry. I'll handle this, Pookums.
Oh, Todd, Harry, Andrew, Philip, I realize this looks completely awful, but I just wanted to assure you, my friends, that I am completely innocent. I'm going to fight this thing till the end. Someone is out to get me, and I know who it is. The important thing is that I can rely on you, my friends, as character witnesses. I'm going to be defending myself, and, well, I wondered if you could see your way clear to perhaps advance me a small loan until the hearing.
Frankly, Winthorpe, and I think I speak for all of us, I think it shows incredibly bad taste for you to come here and embarrass us all like this.
I believe I'm still a member of this club.
Nobody wants to buy your drugs here, Louis. Why don't you just go away?
It's also just painful to watch him try to, like, you know, explain to them, like, there's been a misunderstanding and I can prove it.
It was
blah, blah,
angel
blah, blah.
dust, PCP.
Yeah. That was a pretty good Aykroyd. That was pretty good.
Thank you. I never tried that before. But
yeah, and it's also just going back to what you said about it feeling so natural with Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis. You know, this very, you know, unlikely pair that from what you would assume. Same goes for My Girl, where, you know, she's this like hippie cosmetologist. She's a beautician,
yeah.
And he's an undertaker, and they fall in love. So it's kind of like, I don't know. There's the nature again. Doesn't matter necessarily what you do.
They just have great chemistry, you know?
They really do. And it's funny because it's not one that you would imagine would come across on screen so well.
Right.
But it really hits.
And that was, I had commented on the last episode about, or I think it was on the last episode, about kind of the believability of that relationship.
Yeah. Cusack and Minnie Driver?
Oh, no. I remember at some point saying something to you, maybe it was on the podcast, maybe not, but about how you buy the relationship with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, sure.
In Trading Places.
Yeah.
And I had said that without thinking, of course, because in My Girl, they do have that great chemistry. And it's hard for me to think of them as the same just because it's such different eras of their careers.
Did you just catch a fly with your bare hands?
I attempted to.
Are you at the vice presidential debate? This is what are we? The day after that?
It's the day after. So that you know we haven't hit 100 million fly jokes, but SNL has
now we have.
Yeah, no, that was it. That was it.
That was the one.
No, it was. Oh boy, I didn't watch it, but then I just looked at Twitter.
It's like, there it is.
Saw everything, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, oh my, how does shit keep getting so? Like, is David Cronenberg directing this? Oh, and then of course, that's The Fly. I said David Cronenberg is a director that I thought I was just pulling out of my head.
No, it was. There's a reason for it.
There's a real connection.
Dan, do you remember? Oh, I was going to ask you if you remember the first time that you saw Trading Places.
No, it would have been high school. I got into a big Eddie Murphy phase.
Yeah, you really did.
I was listening to. I had Delirious memorized, like my senior year of high school. I had Delirious memorized. I had most of Raw memorized. I had not all of it that I would ever repeat again.
Oh, but, God, no. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because these tapes were around our house that, like, you know, they'd end up in my cassette player, my Walkman, and I'd listen to this stuff as I was like falling asleep at night. Like all of your you know, comic relief tapes and stuff like that, but definitely Eddie Murphy tapes and stuff. You know, just
I had that.
I would
awesome
just fall asleep
comic
listening
relief
to them.
cassette. Yeah.
Oh,
I had that.
So
I was thinking about that because there's jokes on that comic relief tape that I still think about, that I still remember.
There's the one where Dennis Miller. It says like, I just flew into LA. I love Louisiana. And I think about that all the time.
I think so.
Great Paula Poundstone.
Great Paula
segment.
Poundstone.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the Stephen Wright got pulled over for speeding. The officer goes, "Why were you going so fast?" Or like, "Didn't you see the speed limit sign?" I don't believe everything I read.
Stephen Wright's the best.
Stephen Wright is in that, and Whoopi Goldberg has a phenomenal set. Yeah. But I actually, I'm thinking of having like those. I want those cassettes. I don't know what I would play them on, but
yeah, I know, right?
I'd find something.
I wonder if all of those are available somewhere.
But yeah, so I've looked on Spotify and Amazon Music for comic relief, and I can't find it. But no, my question for you, because this takes place in and around Philadelphia, where you lived.
Yeah, I went to Temple
in
University.
And around Philadelphia.
Yeah, I went to Temple University, and then I lived there for a few years after that. And there was, I mean, the first time that I watched it, where it really sunk in for me, was probably when I lived there, because it was like, oh, a movie that was shot in Philadelphia. There's the Septibus and there's City Hall. And it's like when you live in a city that isn't like New York or LA, even though Philadelphia is a big city, when a movie is set there, Mannequin, like you recognize it and it means something more.
Totally. As living now in Seattle for almost 5 years, I totally get that. And I haven't watched Singles. I watched Singles before we moved out here.
To prepare?
And I haven't. Yes, I needed to know what things were like and where I should go for coffee.
In the 90s.
In the 90s, yes. So I don't know. I was like, Seattle hasn't changed, but it has. But I totally get that. And I feel like next time I watch Singles, because like the scene where Campbell Scott and Kira Sedgwick get into the car accident is like, maybe a half a mile from my house. And the movie theater that they go to before, like the movie theater where they go to the movies, is the movie theater around the corner from my house.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Well, not to give too much information about your location. We know a lot of people are out there trying to find you.
Good luck. There's a lot of movie theaters around the corner from a lot of houses.
Well, you just said exactly what movie theater it was that you're talking about.
No, I just said it's the one around the corner from my house. I didn't say
right. No, but you said that the movie theater where they go to see the movie, that's a Googleable
they don't show
thing.
You. I don't think they show you the name of the theater.
All right, whatever. Anyway.
No one will find me.
No one's looking for you. Anyway, so before we get to our ideas for a new life for this, there was, I could find only very limited information about this, but there was a Trading Places the musical that premiered in Philadelphia, or it was going to. I couldn't find much about it. There's an article on BroadwayWorld.com about it. That's Philadelphia chosen for premiere of Trading Places the musical. I honestly could not tell you. It says it was written in response to the racially charged stories in the news during 2014-2015, serves as an antidote for police brutality, hate crimes, and subsequent riots. I could not find anything else about this. Another article that I found, and there was another one that came out, I want to say November of last year, that said that there was a Trading Places stage adaptation that was going to be coming to New York the next year. And we all know what happened the year after 2019. Yeah, here we are.
2020.
Not a lot of stage plays going up.
Oh, though, I did have another little tidbit about this movie that I was interested to learn, and I didn't know if you had seen this or not, but that apparently the film was originally conceived as a Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor movie.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Black and white.
And can you imagine? I'm thinking about that. I'm imagining the Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor Trading Places. And while I really, really, really want to see that,
yeah,
because it sounds great, it would be such a different movie. And what I read was that Richard Pryor dropped out, and then Eddie Murphy was hired.
Time out. Before you go any further, what I read is that he didn't just drop out, but he couldn't do it because he lit himself on fire smoking crack.
Was that the same? Okay. Yeah. I was like, when did that happen? I thought that happened in the 70s. Or I guess
read somewhere that that's the reason why he couldn't do it.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you read, as Stephen Wright once told me.
Oh man, Stephen Wright is awesome. So but so when after Richard Pryor lit himself on fire and they replaced him with Eddie Murphy asked them to replace Gene Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
I first read this and I was like, my God, why? Gene Wilder is wonderful. And then he was like, he didn't want people to think that he was just like the fill-in for Richard Pryor.
Right, which he was. I think that Richard Pryor was supposed to be in 48 Hours originally.
Oh, I was not.
Again, something else that I read.
I have not researched 48 Hours very much.
I forget where it was that I read that. Maybe it's Wikipedia. I don't know. But
I do like 48 Hours.
Totally.
Very much.
Yeah. Let's see. When they were unable to participate, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it was in something else. But anyway, he replaced Richard Pryor. And to make it not feel like he was just a Richard Pryor replacement. Yeah.
But that makes sense. And I feel like a Gene Wilder, Eddie Murphy Trading Places, that's what it would have felt like, was a cover to a cover band. But I thought that was really interesting. And I'm a fan of the Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor collaborations, though I feel like they did 4.
I would say 4 or 5
altogether. Because it was Silver Streak,
See No Evil, Hear No Evil,
Another You.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another one in the 70s, Silver Streak. I'm really trying to think about this without looking it up.
Well, I'm looking it up. So Silver Streak, Stir Crazy.
I got it right.
Yeah.
No, because I remember like the cover of it has like them in chicken costumes. So
right. No, it's. I think it was a smart move, even though Eddie Murphy probably didn't have too much, sway. He certainly had enough to be able to. He made a strong case, and I understand it, to replace Gene Wilder, which I imagine it was probably difficult for some people to hear. We have to replace Gene Wilder because, hello, it's Gene Wilder.
Probably would have been especially difficult for Gene Wilder.
Yeah,
who would have brought something different to Winthorpe, and I think that what Dan Aykroyd brings to it is he's waspier.
So
to
waspy.
use he's such a strong character actor that he goes all in on it. Whereas I feel like Gene Wilder, there's always some Gene Wilder in the performance. And that is often a strength when you're talking about the producers, Young Frankenstein, Willy Wonka, Blazing Saddles. But what's awesome about Dan Aykroyd is that he does, I think, more than I've ever realized before, but I'm seeing this now in hindsight, not hindsight because he's still alive and working, but that Dan Aykroyd was, and this is, I think, what made him kind of seem like that, the support, because he's such a giver and he's going so much into the character, and he's such a strong improviser and actor that what he's doing is always in balance. When you look at the balance of what
he gives a very
Aykroyd's
authentic performance where, Valentine is definitely a character, like you see Winthorpes walking down the street in every city all the time. They wear very fancy tailored suits. That they have big, important jobs. They make a lot of money. You don't know what they do, but they all kind of have that look. And then you have Valentine. And you can't have two people who are, I don't know, zany or like total characters. You need to have that balance. And Dan Aykroyd lends that.
Unless you switch them, which is what, it's like
trade their places.
Yeah. You take their face.
Yeah. Also, I just want to mention the wordplay of the title and trading and commodities trading only hit me just on this recent watch. That had never been something that kind of crept into my mind. But it's
Yeah,
nice.
Well, there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of things that I never noticed before that are really, really great.
Yeah. So one more thing, while I was looking up to see if there had been any talks about Trading Places sequels or anything, I found this one article that confused me at first because I was like, was there maybe something? And this is an article not about a, what are you doing that for?
Oh, are you referring to there's maybe another movie that takes place in the same universe?
No. There's an irishtimes.com article. So I was like, all right, clearly on the cusp of Hollywood. Did you see this?
No, but I'm just saying this is not the first time we've quoted. I think Irish Times was where we got our Ethan Hawke interview for Explorers. So
that's true.
Irish Times is one of our primary contributors.
Nice. Get a hold of us. We'll collab.
Yeah.
So
email
there's
us,
an article
ruinedchildhoods@gmail.com.
Yeah, there's an article that's like Trading Places 2, and it's like Trading Places 2, the aluminum gold mine caper. And I was like, what is going on here? But then it's like there was this thing that happened that seems like it could have been, this is a real thing that happened that seems like it would have been the plot line of another Trading Places movie. So let me just read a little bit of this. What if I told you there was a planned sequel to Trading Places which involved Eddie and Dan, love that they call him Eddie and Dan, buying up an aluminum warehousing company, drastically disimproving the service, causing long delays in delivery times, and taking advantage of loopholes in commodities trading regulations to effectively corner the aluminum market, making billions in the process? If that sounds like a draft plot for a movie, well, you'd be right. As it happens, the dysfunctional warehouse ruse wasn't the plot of a never-made Trading Places sequel. It is in fact the plot of an insanely convoluted get-rich-quick scheme dreamt up by some giant brains at Goldman Sachs, and it has made the firm billions of dollars in the past 3 years at the expense of everybody who uses aluminum, which is all of us, basically. According to an exhaustive investigative report by David, name that looks Polish that I can't pronounce. In the New York Times, Goldman bought up a company called Metro International Trade Services in 2010, one of the biggest aluminum traders in the U.S., and took charge of 27 warehouses in the Detroit area. Each day, a fleet of trucks shuffle 1,500-pound bars of the metal among the warehouses. They load in one warehouse, they unload in another, and they do it again and again. This industrial dance has been choreographed by Goldman to exploit pricing regulations set up by an overseas commodities exchange. So that totally seems like some sort of like Hollywood scheme that would have been in a movie like this.
Yeah.
And awful that it's a real thing. And I can't believe that people don't talk about these things more. That was the only other thing that I found about a Trading Places sequel. If you also want to talk about... okay, what are you talking about that exists in the Trading Places universe?
Well, I'm referring to the appearance of Randolph and Mortimer Duke in Coming to America.
Oh my God. Were they? I did not realize that.
I think it's at the end, and I feel like what I don't know if it's Eddie Murphy's character, but like gives them $1 or something.
Oh my God.
Or they find money, or it's something where they're like, we're back.
Oh my goodness. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I'm sure that we'll talk about it sometime soon.
No, I remember. Well, there's we've got the Coming to America sequel, which I'm guessing we won't. Yeah.
So the thing that I was thinking of that could be considered to take place in the Trading Places universe is a television show that I worked on for a number of years, Trading Spaces, with Paige Davis.
Clearly. Well, the other thing I was wondering was if it took place in the Rocky.
Well, that was something that was very interesting about this movie, is that they're doing a montage of Philadelphia and showing like Rodin sculptures, because there's the Rodin Museum and like different Philadelphia landmarks. And they show the statue from Rocky 3, which came out, a year before this?
3 years before?
Rocky 3?
No, hold on. I think it came out. Did Rocky 3 come out in 83? No. I think 82.
Yeah. So like a movie that had just come out, there's a statue made for the movie, which still stands in Philadelphia. but it seems like a notable enough landmark for them to include it in the Philadelphia montage in a movie that comes out the next year. Like, was that movie even out when they were making this movie? Hard to say.
Well, and also I'm sure, yeah. So this came out Rocky 3 came out May 28th, 1982.
Right.
Trading Places came out a little bit over a year later, June.
Okay, so it would have
June
probably
93.
just recently come out when they were filming this.
Yeah, but what I love, and this brings us back to, brings us to the opening credits, but what I love about the opening credits is how they show
the difference.
The two sides of Philly.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was kind of like where they show the Rodin, the, highbrow art, and then there's the Rocky statue.
Yeah. Totally.
Which is what everybody where I'm sure, if you went to see Trading Places opening weekend in a crowded theater, especially in Philly, I doubt the Rodin sculpture got as many pops as
my God,
the
are you
Rocky
kidding me?
statue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I thought that it is a really great opening for a movie, and, something that would be done today the same way.
Except it wouldn't, because I feel like the art, like that craft, like I was thinking about themes.
I'm not talking
earlier.
Wait, what do you mean the art?
I mean that, like, just the art of like that type of an opening credit sequence. I just feel like
it wouldn't be
movies,
done the exact same way, but there would definitely be similar methods used to show the difference between the very two versions of the same city.
Although what's interesting? You know what other movie that happens in? Dragnet.
Oh, does it really? I haven't seen Dragnet in forever.
Very similarly, because he is talking about the two sides of Los Angeles: those who have it, flaunt it, and those who aren't, trying to get it. And the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. So that, I guess, leads us into our discussion of what would you do with this?
Well, I would go prequel, because clearly this is not Randolph and Mortimer's first bet. This is not their first wager. So I think I would love to see a prequel, like maybe set in, I don't know, the
Depression.
I was thinking the 1950s.
Okay.
Maybe not their first bet, but like because they're the Duke brothers and they're from generations of they said there's always been a Duke on the board of the stock exchange.
Yeah.
So like they go way back, but just I'm thinking of a prequel about just these two privileged assholes these brothers who can't help but get into these arguments and these debates and end up using other people in their schemes. So I wouldn't want it to be like a remake, but on the other hand, you are making it would be a movie about two pretty despicable people, and it would be interesting if it was told from the perspective of, like, I don't know, someone who worked for the family.
Okay.
Like whether it's the family butler or like their nanny. But something talking about, like, or like imagine like I don't know, Maggie Smith who's reminiscing about her. Maybe it's Maggie Smith, but the year it's 1983, and she's reading in the paper about how the Dukes have gone bankrupt and they've gone pork belly up. No,
and just a quick pause on that. So $400 million is what they lose / they also owe, and the equivalent in today's money, adjusted for inflation, is just over $1 billion. So I feel like that still isn't. I feel like they would have, between the two of them, more than that.
But they're off the exchange. Like the way that they're acting is they've got nothing. So, and I feel like this would still be big news. So I'm imagining, like Maggie Smith, like it opens with Maggie Smith, reading this in the paper.
Love how it's just Maggie Smith.
Of course it's Maggie. Oh, yes, it's Maggie Smith. And it's just like, serves them right. And, the Duke boys were the most vile children that I ever cared for. If there were children that, oh no, it should be Julie Andrews because.
Oh, kind of like Disney tie-ins.
Well, like it's like like Mary Poppins, but she's like those miserable. I just want like her first line in it to be like those miserable little bastards.
Yeah, right.
Got what was coming to them. So I would love, or you could like the Dukes as children as just like these little asshole children, and like a household staff that's just expected to deal with them. So you could have some type of, I don't know, like a good, almost a like Good Boys style thing where it's just the Dukes like just being little shits.
Well, I'm just thinking of how it would be a Trading Places prequel, and what if one of them, what if it's like focusing on their parents who lose one of the kids in a bet, or like maybe they win somebody else's child in a bet, and that's how they become brothers. They're not actually, well, I guess they never indicate that they are necessarily brothers by blood. Maybe one of them is one to the family by a trade.
Yeah, I feel like that also would be acknowledged unless it happened when they were babies. So, I mean, yeah, like you could imagine, I don't know, like Ralph Fiennes as, the Duke's father, like this, kind of a roguish cad and who's a habitual gambler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know. I think in terms of what you're going to do with this, because I mean, I know like Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd are both still around and working, but I just didn't. I couldn't really get with the idea of a sequel.
No, I don't think a sequel. I was thinking more along the lines of remake, because as we've been saying, it's a story that works today just as well as it did then, and I'm sure will in the future, unfortunately, but it's just the shitty reality. I hope I'm wrong. But, and I can't say I really have any groundbreaking ideas about casting, although I feel like Donald Glover would probably be who I would want to have the Valentine-ish role. And also I'd love to see somebody like Adam McKay do it, who loves to really handle these types of movies about especially finance corruption. That's oh man, does he love that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, he knows about it.
That's kind of an understatement.
Yeah, I mean he knows his shit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a casting for that, and I always get into the trouble of like age.
Well, yeah, the thing is, I feel like somebody like Donald Glover is, just young enough to be able to be in that position, and I feel like for a Winthorpe character, I would see somebody like Armie Hammer.
That's who I was thinking for the prequel. That's who I was thinking for the prequel. Really? As a Duke brother. Yeah, I was like Armie Hammer, because he can do the humor. I think
he really can. And sorry to bother you, he showed us that he can hang, and boy does he. I think that he's really talented, and his talents were wasted in a lot of ways. That guy can pull it out, I think. Plus, he comes from old money, so that's fitting.
Yeah, no, that would work. Well, I mean, yeah, and I just, when I think about it, I'm just like, am I just saying that because of the Winklevoss thing? Because that's always what I think about.
Well,
with him.
I think of somebody who can really pull off, being a very waspy.
Yeah,
like you were saying, he can pull off being waspy, but he also can be shitty. What was that movie, that spy movie he did with Henry Cavill?
Was that The Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
Oh, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., yeah. I feel like in that one he's still, I don't know, a big, strong, fancy guy, but he's also shitty. And I like seeing a fancy guy go shitty. So anyway, I feel like he'd be really good at that. But I think that the tendency in Hollywood would be to do kind of like replacing Richard Pryor with Eddie Murphy, whereas like Eddie Murphy would then just be replaced probably by somebody like Kevin Hart, You know, I feel like that would be the instinct of Hollywood.
What about, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? Would Michael Pena be too old?
I think so. I love Michael Pena.
I would love Michael Pena. Yeah, I feel like he'd be too old, but because you don't have to keep it.
You don't have to, and I think that I would be inclined, if I was in any way in control of this, I would be inclined to keep it as more of a white person and black person kind of thing.
Well, but then women,
right?
I'm wondering,
right? But you know, the idea of systemic racism plays into this story so well, and we are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should
did you mean the
explain
Winthrop role?
Well, no. What I was thinking was, you know, how do you get away from the iconic performances in this? How do you present Trading Places without an audience that is both going to expect Eddie, like especially Eddie Murphy, but also is not going to want just like the Eddie Murphy replacement. So like you said, not just putting, you know, it's Kevin Hart, Jay Farrow, you know, but why not then
Robert Townsend?
Take it in a different direction. Robert Townsend. Oh man. Robert Townsend would be, what about Robert Townsend directing?
As a director? Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, he's worked with Eddie Murphy. So I think that changing, because you're right. It doesn't have the same impact without it being a story about, you know, the white privilege and systemic racism.
Right. And yes, there is systemic racism with other races. 100%. I want to make sure that is acknowledged.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, but I agree with you that in terms of the casting, it should be kept that way. But I think that, you know, I'm thinking about women who we could see in these roles, and
you just want to cast Kerry Washington in something. I know that you're always dying to get her in things.
Well, except I wouldn't. Except the thing is that I wouldn't do that unless we were also swapping the races for this, because Kerry Washington, I could see her as Winthrop more than Billy Ray.
That's true.
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Can't think of like you said, like if we were just casting without considering race, like Awkwafina would be,
you know. And I know that I throw out her name a lot, but if we are talking about black women who could play the Valentine role, Nicole Byer, I just want to see her in anything.
Yes. No. I feel like Nicole Byer is kind of the right choice there.
Yeah.
Like,
I also just want to see her acting in more roles, not just doing hosting things. Although she's wonderful at hosting, I just want to see her performing as characters.
Yes. And I think this would be I think taking the Valentine role would be great. I think she'd be amazing in it. And I think honestly, her presence and her performance would make it its own thing.
Yeah, totally.
So there you go. You got
there
it.
We
You
go.
figured it out. I don't know who the Winthrop would be. Blake Lively.
Yeah, well, that's a simple favor to like,
I don't know,
you know,
like Reese Witherspoon. She's too
probably
old.
Aged out. You know, you know, Anna Kendrick, if we're talking a simple favor, you can totally see her doing that kind of thing.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. So
it's always
Anna
funny.
Kendrick, who would have good chemistry with Nicole Byer?
I mean,
well, Anna Kendrick is great. I love her.
Oh, I think that the chemistry comes in. Well, it's so hard to say. It's so hard to say without seeing them, you know?
You know what I was just thinking about? I was like, what if you had could your Winthrop still be a man if you change your Billy Ray to a woman? And I thought, oh, well, then it's bringing down the house.
Yeah. Dan, I am noticing that we are at an hour and 24 minutes. So all due respect, it's so funny because I'm like, oh, we're already a half hour in and we've already gone through the blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, you're an hour later. So, Dan, I think we should talk about our next episode.
And I'll keep it brief. In our next episode, we're going to be looking at 1990, at the Academy Award winner in 1990 for Best Picture, Best Actress, and nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Mr. Dan Aykroyd. We are talking about Driving Miss Daisy.
Yes. Yes, we are.
So I love the music from Driving Miss Daisy. It's awesome.
Please email us, ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Follow us on Instagram, ruinedchildhoodspod, Twitter, ruined_pod. Dan, what do you have to say about Trading Places?
About Trading Places, I hope that Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, and all of you have a good journey.
Yeah, I certainly had one on that Amtrak ride. Good journey.
Zedekiah, my friend. 'Neath the elms we sing our tones. We're brothers to the end.